Now, we'll talk about CUNY and public colleges generally through the lens of one of CUNY's longest serving and, by many accounts, most creative leaders. He is John Mogulescu, now retired after nearly 50 years in teaching and leadership roles at CUNY. His reputation is very much that of an innovator who has tried to keep the system in touch with the needs of the New Yorkers who might attend in each generation. He is said to have created 22 new degree programs, and so it's no accident that the memoir he has just published is called The Dean of New Things. The Dean of New Things, subtitled Bringing Change to CUNY and New York City. Technically, he's now the Dean Emeritus of the School of Professional Studies at CUNY. Dean Mogulescu, congratulations on your career and on your book release. Welcome to WNYC.
Thanks so much, Brian. That's a great introduction. Delighted to be on the show.
Let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I'm a Brooklyn kid. I grew up in Flatbush. I spent my whole life in Brooklyn other than going to college. And my life revolved around sports. I was a good athlete. My parents and brother, my parents were kind of radicals. My father had come up from the South, believing in both civil rights, social justice, anti-fascism, and I guess I was a red diaper baby.
Huh. Talk more about that. Your parents as radicals and how that influenced your early thinking.
Just quickly, my father was a businessman, so obviously, and he was a successful businessman. My mother was a housewife, but got very involved with things like Women's Strike for Peace, and the evening conversation around the dinner table was often about politics. My parents were part of a Brooklyn community of people who were trying to get peace in the world, get along with the Soviet Union at the time. We would have almost monthly forums in which a guy a very distinguished professor by the name of Jack Foner would come to our house and give lectures, and it kind of influenced my thinking to a degree about the world.
But your father was a business owner, so he was sort of a capitalist and a socialist?
That is exactly right. You got it right. We laugh about that, my brother and I and my family today. But yes, that is exactly, he was more of a theoretician. My mother was the activist.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Brown. I was not the greatest of students, but I was a really good athlete, and I was a recruited athlete, and we're not going to get into that in terms of what kind of advantage that is. But I was a tennis player and a basketball player in New York, ultimately became the captain of the Brown tennis team, only played a year of basketball. But I went to Brown and then came back to New York.
What was your major?
Psychology.
How'd you get interested in working in higher ed?
It was by accident. When I first got out of Brown, the Vietnam War was raging, and I got a deferment by teaching elementary school in a poor neighborhood in Brooklyn. Hardest thing I ever did. Just pushed me to the limits. I enjoyed the kids, but I didn't know what I was doing. After 3 years of teaching, I went back to graduate school in social work, and I was a community organizer major, which very few social work graduate schools even have at the moment. And my field placement was put me at New York City Community College, which was a community college at CUNY. And I walked in the door to meet my supervisor, didn't know what a community college was. I kind of had gone to an elite college. I knew Brooklyn College because I went to Midwood High School, which was next door, but I didn't know CUNY. And an hour later, I came out and my life had been changed. The woman's name was Fanny Eisenstein. She was a brilliant, committed person who believed that non-credit programs could change lives. And she said, your field placement as a graduate student in social work was to go into the Brooklyn House of Detention, which was a jail of 2,000 men on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, and organize its first prison education program. And I did that for 3 years. The first year as a student, I then wrote a grant, got the grant application, and we miraculously were approved by the state ed department. And I stayed there for 3 years in that jail every day. So now I'm going from the public schools to the jail, all black and brown inmates and detainees, basically waiting for their trial. And this framed my whole career, both of those early starts.
So you would say they taught you at least as much as you taught them.
Without question, Brian, and the kids in sixth grade for sure, and the detainees as well. And I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about myself and what I wanted to do with my career.
It's interesting, I guess, just as a side thought about the era of the draft during the Vietnam War. You could get out of the draft by faking an infirmity like Donald Trump, or by going to work in an inner city public school like you.
I guess that's correct. Yes, and I chose the the inner city school, but that's another story.
You said New York City Community College. Is that what is now Manhattan, Borough of Manhattan
No,
Community
it's not,
College?
Brian. No, it is now New York City College of Technology. It's located in downtown Brooklyn. It's one of CUNY's now. It offers both associate and four-year degrees. And in 1976, during the fiscal crisis, it changed from a community college to a state-funded, what would we call a senior college at CUNY.
Can you talk about the importance of community colleges
Yeah,
as you
without
see
question.
them today and as you've seen them change during the course of your career?
So much of my career has been related to community college education. I've spent 13 years at that campus of New York City Community and then City Tech. Um, Community colleges does a whole lot of things. I mean, and CUNY has 7 of them. And actually, I founded one of them. I put the team together to found one of them called Gutman Community College. But it takes students who do not have the best academic record coming out of high school, but have a high school diploma or an equivalency, and provide them with opportunity to either major in a career-related field like a nursing or a rad tech or hotel and restaurant, or liberal arts as a pathway to a transfer degree in a baccalaureate as well. They're incredibly important. And in my work, and I started in continuing education, which was the non-credit side of the house, but as I, kind of gained status at the university, I moved to the central office of the university in 1986. We were an office of 6 people in continuing education, but we began to build programs and we began to question, why was it that so many community college students did not do as well as we would like them to do? And so what framed a lot of my work, and this already, I'm really up to now 2000, 2001, 2002, after being involved with literacy education, high school equivalency, workforce development. We had a new chancellor come in, Matthew Goldstein. He was a visionary. He came in 1999. There had been a very critical report of CUNY by Rudy Giuliani called An Institution Adrift. And Goldstein had a vision, and one of the things that he had was to enhance what we were doing at community colleges. And if I could give one quick example, because it turns out to be the most successful community college program, both at CUNY and also in the United States. In 2004, 2005, maybe a little bit later, Chancellor Goldstein went to see Mayor Bloomberg. And it might even have been a bit earlier than that. And he said that the graduation rates at our community colleges are unconscionably low. Urban community college graduation rates were 14, 15%. That's a 3-year graduation rate for a 2-year degree. And CUNY was in that ballpark as well. And he said to the mayor, he said, if you give me some money, we can change that. And the mayor said, well, but what are you going to do? And he gave the mayor the answer. He came back to campus and he called me in. Already at that time, I was part of his senior team. He said, I just got $19 million to put a pilot program together to change the graduation rates at community colleges. And then he said, but the bad part is that I promised the mayor a 50% 3-year graduation rate. And we were in the low teens at the time. And we put a group of people together, and I guess this goes to the Dean of New Things, and they were not necessarily the traditional folks. And we used common sense. We looked at why students were not succeeding, and we said, well, for the most part, you're going to have to go full time. And people criticized us that we were not aware of our students' work, and they're poor, and they're on public assistance.
Kids.
I'm sorry?
Some have kids.
And some have kids, all which was true, and absolutely. But when we looked at the data, 89% of the students at that time who started community colleges started full-time. And those that ultimately then went to part-time and took 3 credits or 6 credits rarely got to the finish line. We then did a lot of other things, and we hadn't got money for the project. We started with a pilot program of 1,100 students. We gave them Metro cards. We filled financial gaps. We kind of put them in cohorts from the beginning. We had what we call intrusive advisement. If someone didn't come to class, we wanted to know why, and we tried. And we were accused of actually, by some folks, of treating them like high school students. And we measured everything from day one. And 3 years later, we had about a 53% graduation rate.
Wow, you went up from low teens to 53%.
Well, this was the first cohort, and I will be honest, we selected people who did not need remediation. And so the control group was probably in the 20s, and we got 53. But we then loosened that as we went on. So then we got money from outside sources, from places like the Robin Hood Foundation and others, to expand to 4,000. And then Mayor de Blasio comes in, now this is later, and we're at 4,000 students. And every time a new mayor comes in, CUNY gives a laundry list of things we would like funded. Very rarely are many of them funded, but you still do it. And he threw everything out and gave us $77 million into our operating budget to expand that one program ASAP to 25,000 students. And we have now done that. It took about 8 or 9 years from that time to do that. And we're a little below 50%, taking pretty much all folks in, and have changed the way you think about community college education. Long-winded answer, Brian, perhaps, but really important. And then Goldstein, almost at the same time, a year later, came to me as well and said that, we also need a new experimental community college. And I put a team together, and we had this incredible group of educators, some faculty, but many from the days of our literacy and GED programs. And we spent a lot of time in taking a look at what a new college would look like. Fast forward, that new college is now called Gutman Community College. We got money from the Gutman Foundation to name it, and equally terrific results with a bit of a different kind of sense of approaching community college education. Now, all this is a long way of saying that what you said about having kids and work and being poor and relatively underprepared is all true. But at the same time, and a lot of the blame, we would always put some folks from CUNY on the public school system. And we worked, one of the things I did at CUNY was oversee the work at the public schools. And we wanted to look at ourselves and see what we could do different. And so, fast forward, I think, the graduation rate is still not what we would like it to be, which is another reason, and we can get to why we have to bring students back to CUNY who have some credit but no degree. But it's been now duplicated in 10 states, and SUNY is just putting it is going to put that same program in 23 of its campuses. The person who ran it for me is now the Senior Vice Chancellor for Student Success at SUNY. She left CUNY a little
So
less than a year ago.
that would mean almost 24 locations all around the state. Where's the Gutman Community College, by the way?
It's right across from Bryant Park. It's on 40th Street. It's a small college of about 1,000 students. We had hoped it was going to be larger. You know, budget problems got in the way and finding space, but it's a small kind of niche community college. And then you had mentioned Borough Manhattan Community College, which is the largest community college, which is in downtown Brooklyn. I'm sorry,
Lower Manhattan.
Did I say?
Yeah, near the World Trade Center and around there. Listeners, anybody recognize the voice? Anybody who had Mr. Mogulescu when you were in 6th grade a million years ago, or at one branch of CUNY or another, or knew Dean Mogulescu and wants to either thank him or tell a story or ask a question, or, of course, I'm sure we have many CUNY students and faculty members listening right now, as well as CUNY alum of many kinds, and many of the CUNY campuses want to talk about the issues which he's raising and focusing on in his book and his memoir, that really, as you've heard from what has been the heart of our conversation so far over the last few minutes, the challenge for any society, and New York taking it on more than many, of trying to get a college degree and a leg up in the economy for as many first generation, I think we can say in most cases, college students and people who come from marginalized backgrounds, low-income backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds of any kind as possible. And Jim in Astoria, you're on WNYC. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Brian. How are you? First, Dean Mogulescu, thank you so much. I'm a CUNY alum. I did my first 2 years at LaGuardia Community College and used the 2+2 program to transfer over to the Grove School of Engineering at City College. And really, I wouldn't have graduated college if it weren't for that program. The small class sizes really paid off. Now I'm a licensed professional engineer. I practice in New York, most of the Northeast, and in Puerto Rico. But without that program, I wouldn't have my career today.
Well, congratulations on that. And a lot of students do start at LaGuardia and go to, you became an engineer, but they go all over CUNY. And I don't even know, Brian, that people realize that CUNY has 25 campuses and 25 schools, 7 community colleges, 11 senior colleges, and 7 professional schools. I also had the privilege in 2002 of being asked to found a school for adults called the CUNY School of Professional Studies by Chancellor Goldstein, and was able to put together a team that within months had begun the school. The school now has over 4,000 degree students and serves 30,000 non-credit students. And I would want to just add, I know we don't have that much time, that the whole question of the mission of CUNY to serve New York City was crucial to my thinking. And that you had mentioned 22 degree programs. Well, the School of Professional Studies developed about 28 degree programs and became the first entity to do online degree programs for CUNY and for adult students. But we had huge undertakings in the K-12 area. We organized 20 early college high schools. We built 3 new specialized high schools at the request of the mayor. We involved ourselves in police work in the city. We started a school for out-of-school youth in the Bronx called CUNY Prep. We brought culture, theater, and music to kids. And things that you don't typically think a university does. And my view is that you can't have a great urban university, public university. It doesn't pay attention to the city that it resides in. And we started with a staff of 6. By 2006, we were at 350 staff, virtually all supported by grant and contract outside money. It didn't cost the university money to support our staff, who became leaders all over CUNY and certainly in the system office and then as well. And so the question of a mission of a great urban university really, to me, has to do with not only degree programs, but serving the city and trying to think, creatively. And higher ed is filled with really smart people, and yet they are resistant to change. And how do you get past that? And that was the task of some incredibly gifted educators that I worked with, who typically would not even necessarily get faculty jobs, but we're on soft money, we're on grants and contracts. And then, of course, you have a vision of a chancellor like Goldstein, who was there for 14 years to see that this happened. So let me stop and see if we take other questions.
Janet in Brooklyn, you're on WNYC. Hi, Janet.
Good morning. I'd like to ask your guest, if you have a student who's really struggling to get through the CUNY system, what would you suggest for them to do?
Yeah, well, I think that now there are both tutoring centers, there are advisors, there are folks you can go to on each campus to try and change that equation. I don't know what campus that person is at, and it's hard to speak on it, but not to be quiet about it. And then it's the role of CUNY to get early alerts, to understand that this student is in trouble. This student's midterm grades are not so good, and that it's our obligation to kind of figure out what we need to do to assist. So, I wish I knew more about the situation, but that's where I would start.
So to her question about affordability and who's falling through the cracks, and Lisa, thank you for your call and good luck with you and your family. I mean, Bernie Sanders ran for president on free public college for all. Is that something you support or think would help CUNY and the students who could use it?
I think it would help everybody. I will say that whether it could ever get passed is another question. But at CUNY, if you are, at one of our community colleges, the vast majority of students pay no tuition and do not wind up with debt, because between the state tuition assistance program, TAP, and the federal Pell Grant, large numbers of students do not. Now, some do, and some, that are more middle class do. Excelsior is one answer, but CUNY students do not graduate with the kind of debt that are coming out of the private schools, and so, in the best of all worlds, I would go back to when I started going to CUNY. Everything was free. Is that going to happen politically? Probably not. But it's not that I would be opposed to it.
We're just about at the end of our time, and I'm going to shorten our next segment a little bit just so I can get a few of these other folks in here. I did say when I was inviting calls that if anybody wanted to thank you personally who came through your classes or your deanship, they could call in with that. So we're going to keep these short. But Joe in Brooklyn, what do you want to say to Dean Mogulescu in 15 seconds?
In 15 seconds, just thanks, John. This is just an honor to have worked with you. You're a role model and a mentor. Your two skill sets of always being dedicated to the students and the good of the students, and bringing together a group of really great people. I was honored to serve on some of those groups, and I really appreciate all you've done. And also your deftness at manipulating the often complicated political situations at CUNY. You left me awestruck many times. So
thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. One more. Margie in Midwood, you're on WNYC. Margie, 15 seconds for you.
John was my social work student supervisor. He was the best. I worked with him at the Brooklyn House of Detention in 1980, 79 and 1980, and I couldn't have asked for a better person. The best. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll read one text message that came in. I'll read part of it. I'm a product of your guest's work. In the 2000s, I attended NYCCT. It wasn't easy, as I was an immigrant with some language barriers, also a young single mother who struggled with mental health issues at the time. I quit college a couple of times because life was so overwhelming at the time, but I never forgot what made me come back was a letter from the dean stating that I was in good standing and they'd like me to come back. I felt cared for and came back both times. So with those testimonials, we leave it with John Mogulescu, whose new memoir about all the things we've been talking about and more is called The Dean of New Things, Bringing Change to CUNY and New York City. Dean Mogulescu, again, congratulations on your career and the book, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.